Hey everyone, my name is Adam with Antique Auto. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm working on a 1971 Buick GS Stage 1 convertible 4-speed. That's a mouthful. Pretty cool car. It's actually one of 9 built that year. This one has been here for several months. Really haven't been doing much to it because we hasn't really been on the front burner. But if you remember a couple videos earlier, we did some engine work on a 455 that had a broken camshaft and all kinds of bearing issues. Came out of this car. So now we have the new engine installed, and I have a few little things that I took care of. So now we get to move on to a couple other little things. Today I'm going to be doing convertible top motor bleeding, pump bleeding, and I'm going to show you that in depth. So let's get started. So there are just a few little things that are left on this list for this car. I'm going to pan through here real fast. Took care of a few authenticity issues. The windshield was installed, I believe, with must have just been urethane, or it's got butyl tape on it, but it's sunk. So I've got to take all the trim off, remove the windshield, and reinstall correctly. Probably needs spacers down here where those stops are. But inside, those are not the correct door panel screws. So what I've done is just dug into my pile, and these are actually correct. They had that small washer on them. So I've got to remove all of these screws, polish those up, and get those installed on it. So unfortunately, I think you may see an imprint of these screws on the door panel. So we'll see how that looks, but I don't know. Earlier I replaced a bunch of stuff inside the steering column to make this horn button work. It was basically just rattling around in here. It was missing that big circular spring washer in there that keeps it taut. Also, it had the wrong turn signal switch in it, didn't work, and the horn blew all the time. So that was fun to fix. I think I replaced 3 or 4 different parts in there. They all came from different cars and different years and wrong applications. So, all right, I've already got the back seat out, and we are getting ready to do a bleed on the top pump. Okay, since we have access into here, there's the rubber plug that we've got to take out on the top of the pump that I've got to fill the fluid with there. But you can see that the pump is held in with zip ties, and 2 of them at that. So what I've got to do is remove, well, actually, you know what? It's got 1 correct rubber grommet in there. I have, what I thought I needed was 3. I only need 2 now. Is get those zip ties replaced with these correct grommets. And then I can pull the plug and start cycling the pump with fluid. So the reason we need fluid is because it leaked pretty much everything out. And there's still a little bit left in the tube there, but several years ago, this thing was at McCacken and the owner locked his keys in the trunk, so we had to get through the trunk through the back seat. And when we pulled the back seat, we found all this fluid all over the place. And it turns out that all of the fittings, top and bottom on all 4, or all 2 of the rams, were hand tight. So I went ahead and tightened them up, and I'm going to use the Fisher body manual method of filling this thing up, and we'll see how it works. Okay, you can see my 2, well, I've got 2 new ones in there. That first one is an old one. Moral of the story is, try not to half-ass the job by putting a pump in with zip ties. So what I usually do is I'll take a small Phillips screwdriver. I've got this broken off all. Push. Well, that one's already goner. Anyway, I take some sort of a blunt object and push through the center of these holes, if you can get to it, and that should push the grommet right through there. You shouldn't have to worry about, let me see if I can get a good shot here. Shouldn't have to worry about trying to take a screwdriver and forcing the sides in. Everything is just so tight back here. I'm not strong enough with my right hand. Anyway, that's a giant pain in the ass. So what I ended up was I pushed as far as I could, and then I reached under with my hand, just kind of wiggled and pulled until it finally came through. You really need to lube these things to get them to go in. Let's try this side real quick, since I can actually reach it. So I'll put my trusty all in, push down. Come on now. This happened on the other one. I broke through. So what I need to do is I'll reach under there and just kind of wiggle it in and pull it through from the bottom side. Okay, that's what it should look like. It's all the way through. All three of them are in. Now I can finally start the bleeding procedure. Yeah, I normally use this method to pump fluid into the reservoir or this little oil can here, but I am going to use the factory manual method, and I'm going to use this, but I'm just going to take a long hose and stick it in there and cycle the top until all the air is gone out of it. All right, now in my awesome 400-year-old Mighty Vac kit, I have got these two hoses that are in the kit that I put together, and I've got a couple of fittings here that I'm going to stick on the end to go into the pump itself, because it's got to be airtight, because it needs to create a vacuum to pull the fluid in. Okay, I have the top boot removed from the well, and all my stuff is hooked up. Let's give her hell. I'm gonna take the windows down and start cycling it. Hopefully there's, oh, they're not power windows. Don't know why I assumed they were. Disconnected. Here we go. It must be completely empty. So now I've got to prime it. Now that I've made a huge mess back there, let's try again. Now we're pulling fluid. Switches backwards. Somehow. I'm pulling air. I think this little this hose that I've got in here is curly, so it doesn't want to stay straight down. kind of a bummer. Make sure I'm not leaking all over the place. So far, so good. I think I fixed the hose issue. See if we can actually pull fluid this time. Oh yeah. Is this thing empty? A gallon? No. Scares the hell out of me that this top's never been up or down. Because it'll be my fault if it breaks. Circuit breaker kicked. Okay, so I ended up cycling the top about a half dozen times. Got everything cleaned up. That method of pulling fluid straight out of the bottle is way faster than trying to just manually feed and cycle, open it back up, feed, cycle, etc., etc. That method that I used to use would take me almost, a half an hour, close to an hour sometimes to completely get everything filled up. That took like 5 minutes. So I guess Fisher Body knew what they were talking about. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, moving on to door panel screws. These screws that I've got, they came out of my parts bin, and they've got some, crud or surface rust on them. So I just take a little 4/0 steel wool and just twist on the head of the screw until it's as clean as I can get it. and move on. But I try to do this with all the screws that I am installing, or at least check on and make sure they're clean already, because there's nothing worse than a perfect interior and rusty headed screws. Well, there's probably some other things worse than that, but 5 on each side. Let's do 5 here and then I'll get them installed. I think if you remember earlier, I talked about these screws creating an imprint on the door panel, which may be an unfortunate situation here. Golly, that thing's huge. I'm gonna have to clean that up, but you can see that there's just an outline like that. We'll see what this looks like when I get this in. Sometimes this stuff relaxes enough to where it doesn't show very much, but yeah, I mean, that's as good as it gets. I'll go ahead and clean that up. And the screws they put in here are 6 feet long. These are one of the things that not a lot of people realize is incorrect. You see a lot of what you think are original cars with these big washer screws in here. In actuality, it's a band-aid for these screws, because a lot of them end up getting driven through, or the door panel rips through and the screw doesn't hold it anymore, so they get these larger screw washers and set them on there that way, which is why you see a lot of this incorrect stuff on these cars. All right, I think I'm gonna call it quits for today. It's 2:30 and Super Bowl is on in a couple hours, so I'm gonna go ahead and take care of getting the back seat buttoned up probably tomorrow. I didn't think you needed to watch that since you've probably seen it a few times. Let's see what else. Oh, the windshield. I'm gonna wait on. I've got my windshield in my truck that's got to be replaced, so I'm gonna have the guy do this one at the same time. He's just gonna remove it, reseal it, put it back in. He can do it without breaking it, and it's $100 well spent. So the only other thing that's left on this car, obviously, is to put the lid back on, but I also have to break in the engine, and that's usually kind of a nail biter, because you never know what's gonna happen on, especially on an engine you haven't built. So I'm gonna wait for a little bit nicer weather and get this thing pushed out to where the exhaust is pointed out of the shop, so I don't smoke myself out in the process. So I'm probably gonna do a video on that as well, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.